Minister of Justice Ronald Lamola has become one of the most influential and famous ministers that South Africa has had in a long time. During his tenure as Justice Minister, the Guptas have not been extradited back from the UAE when they were supposed to come back to face charges of state capture. Jacob Zuma was released with an unbelievably well-timed remission order from the president just hours after he'd been sent back to jail. And most recently, Ronald Lamola was part of the team that represented South Africa in the International Court of Justice, accusing Israel of genocidal acts and genocidal intent against Palestinians in Gaza. And you're about to hear him answer all of those questions, in particular about the ICJ, because you'll remember South Africa represented their case so superbly on that fateful Thursday, and then Israel responded on Friday, but the nature of the proceedings meant that South Africa didn't have right to reply to Israel's case. And so I ask him the biggest contentions from what Israel had to say after South Africa's performance. This is The Issue with Dan Corder. South Africa is a movie. Welcome to the watch party. As you know already, you can catch all of our episodes in extended cuts on podcast streamers, and we have a brand new Patreon where if you go across and subscribe, you will get a brand new exclusive interview with an expert on a massive issue facing the country every single week. Links to all of that are in the bio to this video and in the little information tab that's in this corner, I think, of the video, or maybe this one, you'll see it, but all the links are there. Lastly, if you haven't clicked subscribe on our channel yet, please do so. It costs you nothing except maybe 2 seconds of your time and makes a massive difference to developing the show. Right, let's get into it. This is The Issue's exclusive interview with Minister of Justice Ronald Lamola. People know that this interview is about to happen, and all they wanted to say was, you have to wear a beanie. That's all I ask of you. It's just something that happens on the show. Don't question it. I just want you to choose one. So here are all of your different options. Got many different colors. Which one is making you happy?
This one.
Vote.
Yeah. It's a voting year. So
yes, it's good. It's also your football team's colors.
And it also has my colors.
Kaizer Chiefs.
Yeah, and the ANC.
And the ANC.
Yeah, it's a comprehensive one. So I'm fine with this one.
It's exactly what we want. So you obviously Minister of Justice, and I have followed your term for a long time. I have many questions to ask you. But firstly, you were on the worldwide news headlines as part of the judicial team, the legal team, that went to The Hague, to the International Courts of Justice, to argue that the state of Israel has exhibited genocidal intent and has also committed at least one, if not a few, acts of genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza. Israel's team got up and defended themselves on the Friday, and you guys had no rights of reply. And so I'd love to ask you about some of the challenges that the Israeli team put forward on Friday for your response as part of the South African team. So the first thing that the Israeli side essentially said is that they had a right to defense. And the way that they'd gone about their attacks and their military moves in Gaza was about destroying Hamas, which they have to do because Hamas literally says that they want to destroy Israel. And all of the kind of civilian casualties were unfortunate, but they didn't have any choice. What do you say to that?
We were able to quote from the jurisprudence of the court itself that stated that whatever the atrocities that has been committed, genocide cannot be a self-defense. So on the basis of the jurisprudence of the court, if the court does find that South Africa has made a case in terms of the test, which is plausibility. Remember, this time is not the substance of the case. It's the plausibility that there could be, or it is within the realm of the Genocide Convention, what the State of Israel has been doing in Gaza. Therefore, indeed, they cannot use self-defense as an argument by the court. It can't be. You can't be involved in acts of genocide as a self-defense. So that won't stand by the standards of the court. So we are convinced. We have also anticipated and argued. You will remember that the intention there is not just targeted to the Hamas, its leadership and so forth. It's targeted to the entire Palestinian population in the occupied Gaza. Not only them, but also civilian infrastructure, hospitals, water provisions and
churches,
roads,
mosques,
churches
graveyards,
and all.
yeah.
So that can be still be within the definition of self-defense.
Israel made the point that, okay, but if Hamas just chooses to use human shields and try and involve themselves as closely in a society, use apartments in buildings where those civilians living, then how is Israel supposed to try and take out Hamas if Hamas is using human shields?
Yeah, there are rules of international law in relations to war zones and situations. They must abide by that. You can't flatten the entire infrastructure because you are looking for one person. And if you even when you look at the numbers, it's no longer in terms. It's not proportional to even to what they have as Israel. So it has gone far beyond what could be proportional, accepted as self-defense. This is now genocide with a clear intent to wipe out or to cleanse the entire Gaza Strip of the Palestinian population.
As we record, just this morning, South African time, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, told the President of the United States and America as a whole that after this conflict, he would not accept any creation of a Palestinian state as a resolution, which seems to tie in with South Africa's argument that Israel does not want Palestine to exist.
Yes, it's very clear. I mean, yes, that's what he said this morning. And I'm happy that the U.S. state is also a bit retreating because they were also very firm with them to say that they believe in a two-stage solution, which we also believe in as per the resolutions of the UN. But you will remember that is one of the arguments that we use to back our argument in court to say that despite the actions which are clear, targeted to civilian infrastructure, to wipe up the entire population, killing of innocent children and so forth, is backed by the statements of the Prime Minister who declared an Amalek to cleanse that whole population.
Even cows and donkeys, it's an extraordinary Bible verse.
Yes. So is a clear, if that can be a clear statement of intent, then nothing will, because you cannot, as per what the Israel's argument they were saying, that it's we must take the statements of the Prime Minister, of the Minister of Defense, and the generals as political rhetoric and politics speak. You can't take a statement of a Prime Minister as political rhetoric.
And as Senior Counsel Toby said, nobody tells you in advance they're going to commit a genocide.
Yeah, no,
so you've got to take on the evidence.
Yeah.
So South Africa has a long history with both Israel and Palestine. The Israelis loved the apartheid government. They tried to create a nuclear weapons partnership with the apartheid government. John Vorster, former Prime Minister, was a famously anti-Semitic person, but went to Jerusalem in the 70s on a diplomatic mission, and the Israelis were very happy with that. And on the other side, famously, Palestinians also always stood with the struggle against apartheid for people of color and black people in South Africa. But what the Israelis tried to do, or at least the Israeli case tried to do in the ICJ, was paint South Africa as, at the very least, sympathizers of, if not active supporters of Hamas. And they did correctly identify that I think Naledi Pandor took a call from Hamas leaders a couple of weeks, if not months ago, and Hamas leaders were actually also welcomed to South Africa on a diplomatic mission. Do you think that should affect the case?
No, it's irrelevant because it has never been a secret. Our relations, long-standing relations with the Palestinian cause, under the leadership of Yasser Arafat, the ANC in particular. But we never had any relation with Hamas. Even in the court itself, we had the representative of the Palestinian state. We did not have, we were not working with Hamas. And we have always dismissed such as irrelevant. But in the course of diplomatic work, you engage everyone. It does not mean that because I've engaged with you, therefore I work with you or I am supporting your cause. But it's important to understand the sides of everyone, engage and so forth. But our relation has been very clear, is with the state of Palestine. And
sorry, what is the state of Palestine in your minds? Is it the Palestinian Authority based in the West Bank?
Yes, that is the state that is running Palestine, and they were also present in court. they supported the program.
So you guys don't support Hamas at all, and the conversations that, or the diplomatic correspondent that the ANC-led government had with Hamas was largely just to talk to everybody in a crisis.
Yes, we don't have any bilateral relation with the Hamas, either at the political party level or at the state level.
I imagine you would condemn what Hamas did on October 7.
We condemned it in real time and at that time. And when the state of Israel raised the concern that we did not condemn Hamas, we also did in a note verbal formally to the state of Israel and draw them to the attention to the statements that we have issued to condemn that action.
So I've been thinking a lot about what happens now when the court makes a ruling. Let's start with if the court rejects the case and disagrees with South Africa. For you and for many in South Africa, the case is so clear-cut that what would it mean if the court disagreed and sided with Israel? Would it be a miscarriage of justice?
Yes, it will be a miscarriage of justice. It will be a setback. But we believe that we will still have made our point. We will have shifted the international opinion. We will have exposed the atrocities happening in Gaza, so which is what we have done in court. Now the international community sees the conflict differently because they've always seen it from the eyes of the propaganda of the state of Israel.
Okay, so for you, there is an already achieved value to have laid the case that everyone then watched. Although controversially, a lot of Western media outlets did not show the South African case live. They only showed the Israeli case live. And so I think whoever's watching should think very carefully about what you are shown or not shown by different media houses around the world. Okay, so what about the hypothetical that South Africa wins? So there are lots of things the ICJ could do. They could order Israel to stop, at least to stop parts of their activities. They could order Israel to allow in humanitarian aid, which the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, has denied. They could order Israel to allow independent journalists in and not kill them, which Israel has managed to stop doing. And they could allow for a proper commission of inquiry and investigation. The fundamental problem, as many people have said, and I think some criticisms of the South African case are like, but what's the point? Because if South Africa wins, Israel can just say no. We won't stop. We disagree, which they clearly will. They have said as much. I think Netanyahu tweeted a few days ago that like nothing will stop us, not even the Hague is what he said. And then the correct procedure after that is to appeal to the Security Council, which Israel's firmest ally, the United States, has already vetoed resolutions to try and get a ceasefire. And I'm sure will again, since that they have said that they see no evidence of genocidal acts in Israel. What is the point then?
Firstly, the point you will have heard from the submissions of Israel. Most of the things that they've said they've allowed, including humanitarian aid, it was done a week before. And
for the case, to sweeten the case.
Yeah, this escalation. The U.S. even have now been vocal about the issue of the two-state solution, which they were not very vocal prior to the submission of the case. So already we have shifted and moved the boundary a bit, which is an achievement. If there is a court order, I believe the court order will also be very authoritative for the international community to be able to make the necessary diplomatic calls and noise to put pressure to the state of Israel to respect. So that court order will not just be in paper, but it will be standing as an authoritative factual finding by the court. So it will not only end at the Security Council. It can also be taken to the General Assembly of the UN. You will remember that South Africa was expelled from the UN on the basis of not willing to respect those institutions. So there is a point in taking the matter. Firstly, for the international community. Secondly, also in those multilateral bodies of the UN.
So earlier this week. As far as I can tell, a bunch of anonymous Twitter trolls said, who funded South Africa's case? Was it Iran? And it seems like a conspiracy theory with no evidence, but also no understanding, because the argument was essentially, how could South Africa afford to send this legal team as though we're a bankrupt nation with 0 rands in the budget, which is obviously insane. But that conspiracy theory got so much wind in it that in the end, like a substantial authoritative media publication allowed an opinion piece to be written saying maybe it was Iran. And this ties into this idea that Israel put forward that basically the South African government is the legislative arm of Hamas. Although they do like to say that a lot. Like I think that they said Turkey was also another arm of Hamas. They like saying that. Could you just explain how the case was put together and how the Justice Department puts together such teams and why, firstly, it was fully within your budget to be able to handle this, but secondly, how like this was South Africa's idea from the start and not the work of like a silent hand puppet master?
Yeah, it's really disingenuous, isn't it? I mean, we carried the case from the onset, including to choose the legal reps who will help us, and all the processes have been done in line with South African government policy and so forth. So that is what we have done, and we are handling it within our processes, and even some of the councils, some of them even acted pro bono. So it's really disingenuous to say that. So this is a case run by the South African government with no a hidden hand helping us with the case.
Okay, so I don't want to upset you, but we're going into an election and maybe you won't be the Minister of Justice afterwards. The polls don't make good reading for the opposition, but there's a chance that the ANC might be out of power. How do you reflect on your time so far as the Minister of Justice in the Department of Justice? What do you think you have achieved and what do you think you still have left to achieve?
Yeah, I will be the minister unless the president decides otherwise. Because
how are you the president? Is he responding to your WhatsApps?
I believe he will still be the president.
But do you guys WhatsApp? Are you on good terms?
Yeah, no, we're fine.
Do you send him memes sometimes?
No, not the memes.
Actually, this is actually what I've always wanted to ask. You know that South Africans are very funny online. Do you ever read tweets about you, like memes?
Yeah.
You do read the tweets?
Yeah.
Do you ever want to respond?
Some I do, some I don't. It depends. I have to, yeah. So, yeah.
Okay. But let's reflect on the term as Minister of Justice that you have already done. What do you see as some of your achievements and what do you think you still left to do?
No, I think some of the greatest, proudest moment was how we handled COVID. With the regulations and helping the South African society to participate in the process and come up with the regulations that will enable us to manage the pandemic, the transition in our processes of justice to modernize the systems, digitize. There's already platforms that are able to work, others are not working, which we are attending to. And also the courts still being able to function and people access the courts during that difficult period of COVID, and also the processes related to the permanent establishment of the ID.
Sure.
I believe those are the what we can put out there.
For sure. And then the other thing many people just spoke about, which is like the pandemic of South Africa, is gender-based violence. And many people were wondering if you had plans as the Justice Department to make it easier for people seeking to get a restraining order or to open a case of sexual assault or harassment to get through the court system more quickly and effectively, given that sometimes it takes a long time. And particularly with gender-based violence, it's often people who the victims know in their communities, sometimes in their households. And I think a lot of people have a frustration that the wheels of justice turn too slow when it comes to gender-based violence.
Yeah, the first step that we have taken is to digitize the way people apply for a domestic violence order, which you can now do via WhatsApp or online and so forth. So that is the first step, which has been enabled by some of the legislative changes that the president has just accented to. So the second step, obviously, is that within the system, it must be victim-friendly, and they must be able to testify in a victim-friendly environment. And most of the sexual offences courts have been transformed to be able to do that, where in certain situations the witnesses can testify via visual link without having to have contact with the perpetrator and so forth. So we've tried our best to make it as friendly as possible, and also with the assessment of experts to get psychological help and so forth. So that is the process that the court we have tried to transform it to make it as victim-friendly as possible, particularly for the victims of gender-based violence.
Yeah, and I mean, it sounds like, particularly with sexual offences, that there are attempts to fast-track the process, at least to make sure that potential victims or alleged victims are seen to and looked after more quickly than in other kinds of cases. Is that so?
Yes, that's why we have got this sexual offences court, which is a separate court role from the normal court role, where sometimes it may take longer than in a sexual offences court. The only thing now that sometimes delay the courts, it could be the DNA results.
I see.
And also the sometimes maybe the representatives not being well and all that. But we have really tried that the system must move as expeditiously as possible.
Sure. There were three major questions that came through on Twitter regarding high-profile moments for the Justice Ministry in the last year or so. So I'm just going to go through them because it's what people really want to hear about. The first one is, what went wrong with the Guptas being arrested in the Emirates and there being an extradition treaty between the Emirates and South Africa to bring them back to face justice, and then it never happened?
Yeah, firstly, it's a subject of questions we have sent to the UAE, which the UAE has not yet answered.
So they ignored your requests?
Yeah, we sent questions wanting to know exactly what was wrong with the application, because we need to resubmit. But
are they still holding the Guptas?
No, it was the state of last sight, which means that we need to resubmit at the UAE as we speak.
But are the Guptas still under arrest? Can they still be brought back?
No, they've been released by the UAE. But in terms of Interpol, they can still be arrested in any country which is a member of Interpol.
So did the UAE think there was a problem with South Africa's application? Is that why they didn't?
Yes.
What did they say the problem was?
That is the question we have sent them, and which they have not yet answered. So for us to be able to resubmit...
They said there was a problem but didn't say what the problem was.
You will remember the court order said that the submission was that it's a cancelled warrant.
Yes.
We had submitted a proper warrant with our submission, and whatever that was done with regards to the cancelled warrant, it was discussed between the authorities, the NPA in South Africa and the prosecuting authority in the UAE. They advised how we should submit. So all the papers, how we submitted them, it was on the basis of the advice of the authorities in the UAE. That is the first point. The second one...
But then they still found a problem with it.
Yes. So that's why we were surprised. I mean, we followed what they said.
But it's odd that they released the Guptas while they wanted you to correct the application. Yeah, why did they do that? Surely they should have held the Guptas until your application was corrected.
Yeah, so all those are part of the questions we have sent to the UAE.
And they haven't responded?
No.
Is it literally like, have they grey ticked you on WhatsApp? Is it like they're not responding to emails?
Yeah, they're not responding to that question, because for us to... We can resubmit, but we will run into the same problem.
The second question regards somebody who, ironically, in the last month has become a little bit annoying, it's fair to say, for the African National Congress, Jacob Zuma, because in early August last year, he returned to, I think it was Escort Prison, to be re-enrolled for the rest of his prison sentence as ordered by the Constitutional Court when he was in contempt of court, and then was released on what seems to be a dodgy medical parole. And then a couple of hours after he appeared at the prison, he was released on, what's it called that the president did? Remission. To release a bunch of deemed to be non-violent, non-threatening prisoners to take the burden off the prison system. And you actually addressed the media that morning, if I remember correctly. It wasn't the president. And a lot of the questions were like, we didn't hear anything about this. Where did this come from? South African politics is notoriously leaky. Most things get to the media before they come out of a politician's mouth. Like, the plain and simple accusation was, the presidency has done this to release somebody who he's trying to placate, because Zuma might be a bigger problem for Ramaphosa in prison, as we've seen in the past, allegedly, than out of prison. So he's trying to take a soft hand and keep him out of jail by calling for remission on the exact morning that it could get Zuma out of jail. What was your response to that?
Yeah, I think it's not informed by facts.
Okay.
The facts is that we started the project of remission
Sure.
in early March last year, and we were following all the procedures of the remissions. You will remember that during that week, there's a prison that burned in Makado. We lost about 3,000 beds
Yes.
at a go.
Sure.
So we did not have the space to take all these people into. So that's why we then urgently said, President, this project, we have been running it from March with an intention that we must ease the system. But the fact that there is a prison that has now banned, where we have to now spread all these inmates or prisoners across the province of LMN, which is Limpopo, Mpumalanga and Northwest, and throughout the country, we now need your help to ease the space with the special remission. And the president understood, and he did that.
So I think the target was to release about 7,000 prisoners. Is that right?
10,000.
10,000. And
Yes.
have they all been released now?
Yes.
Okay. And why was only Zuma released on that morning?
There were many others who were also released.
On the same morning?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the second or the second big question. The third one is from more recently about how the Supreme Court of Appeal ordered the presidency to stop funding many of Jacob Zuma's legal bills a couple of years ago, actually. And then more recently said, why hasn't the presidency not stopped? But the Supreme Court of Appeal also ordered that money be reclaimed. And the value now sits at around 35 million rand. Why hasn't the Supreme Court of Appeal's order for the presidency been honored? Why has Zuma not been ordered to give back those tens of millions of rands of taxpayers' money that the Supreme Court of Appeal says should never have been spent by the presidency on Zuma's court cases?
Yeah, firstly, on the order to stop it, it has been stopped. We have complied with that first part of the order.
Okay. How recently?
No, since the order was made, we are no longer paying for the
But the money value has gone up. It was about 18 million in the first, when the Supreme Court first made the order, and now it's over 30 million.
Yeah, it's because of the work that was done by the state attorney to look into how much in actual value that has already been spent.
Oh, so you're saying it was stopped?
It's not a new.
Okay, so you're saying it was stopped immediately.
Yes.
But then it turns out it was actually 35 million, not 18
Not
at the
18,
time.
Yes.
Okay.
So because of the thorough work they had to do,
Okay.
to look into all the files, the cost, the invoices and
Sure.
everything. So which led to the delay in them instituting the proceeding. And they are proceeding to institute the proceeding to recover the money.
To get full 35 million back.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. And lastly, Minister Lamola, ANC member Ronald Lamola. Some prominent leaders have left the ANC. Why do you think Ace Magashule and Jacob Zuma are so angry with the ANC and describing the current leadership as sellouts and apartheid collaborators?
Yeah, obviously, firstly, the president has said it in the January 8 statement, is because of the program of renewal.
Okay.
The ANC is cleansing itself. It's in a program of renewal to restore its values. In that process, there will be those that are not compatible with the values of the ANC. They are going to leave.
Okay.
And the two individuals you have referred to, is because of that. With regards to the president being an apartheid collaborator, I can state with you now that it is this president who is now going to accede to the convention that declared apartheid a crime against humanity. No any other president has done it in the country, not even President Mandela, Mbeki, and even former President Zuma. It is the sixth administration of President Ramaphosa that you could see action happening with regards to the TRC crime. Anton Timoli, Agad, the Imam in the Western Cape, and recently with the Credit 4, that there's an inquest, and they are also in a matter where people coming out of the TRC cases have been convicted. He put resources in terms of money and also in terms of investigation by the Hawks and also the NPA having prosecutors dedicated.
Sure.
So if he was an apartheid collaborator, why would he want that to happen?
Sure.
He is also this administration that has put the land court to adjudicate on land court matters. It is this administration that has also passed through the expropriation bill that no any other administration has done. So if you are saying it does not want to attend the land question, the means of production, to ensure equitable distribution, why will he want the expropriation bill to go through? And all the bills that are aimed to transform the economy of the country, including the competition amendment bill, which is aimed to dismantle and deconcentrate monopolies in the South African economy.
Sure. And final question, if the ANC drops 7.5%, they will still, on the last election, general, they'll still win 50%, which means that ANC will be an independent majority, as the ANC has always been since its very, very first election in 1994. Would that constitute a successful election campaign for the ANC? Or is 50% plus one vote not enough to be considered a successful campaign?
It will be a successful campaign given the challenges we came from. As I said, this is the first administration where we had to deal with COVID.
That's true.
The July riots, the natural disaster in Durban. No any other president has faced all these challenges.
For sure.
Also the scale of load shedding, which we are also inheriting from the past. So it will be a successful campaign.
So, what do you think of the minister's answers? Let me know in the comments and on social media. We're everywhere. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't yet, click subscribe on the channel. Again, it would make such a difference if you did so for us and cost you nothing. And while you're pottering around the internet this week, maybe go and have a look at our brand new Patreon, where for subscribers, for a small monthly fee, you are getting a once a week release of an exclusive interview with a top level expert on a big challenge or issue or topic facing South Africa. I'd really recommend you go check it out. The interview we've already put out is with a top economist called Brindy Kreft on why South Africa's unemployment crisis is so bad and just won't go away. Otherwise, see you in a few days. Thank you for watching.